Okay. I'll speak a little bit verbally on the case of feed-in tariff in Germany, but I will add that later on in a final version. Maybe I'll add a couple of slides after we finish, and then send the final version of the presentation.
Okay, sure. Yes. And then they can share, you could share it with the participants. That would be great. I'm sure they would ask about that.
Yeah, sure. But likely, if I forget to ask, then you might tell me what happened in Germany.
Okay, I will try to remember. I think in the beginning you got a translation of the German feed-in law, right? When you were in NREA, right? When you were chairman of NREA.
Yes. It's a very interesting story because actually it started with the manufacturing, with the manufacturers, not the government, not the end users, but the manufacturers sort of lobbied very, very aggressively. And then as a result of that, a feed-in tariff legislation was issued. And
this is naturally the best way to happen, I think, Dr. Subki, because then you have the interest behind it. Who will they continue on using it? No?
It's really drivers behind the curtain.
I think similar to the current net metering issue.
Exactly.
In Egypt, right?
Exactly. It's an interesting thing. I'll have a sort of a comment on the case of Malaysia, where they have a net metering, but was for large-scale projects rather than small-scale projects. So it is something which everyone can benefit and learn from.
All right, let's see how many. It's now 10 o'clock, but just check.
We have 19 participants.
19 participants, yes, I can see that. Maybe wait 2 minutes.
Yeah, sure. No. Is that the first session for the participants for the day, or is it the only session?
It's not the only, actually, but it's the seminar. I mean, after that, there's tutoring, but not today. I don't think today is a tutoring session, no. On the 31st, it's the next one, as far as I remember.
Oh, I see. A lot of good mornings in the chat.
وصباح الخير كمان.
Yeah. Why not?
I have a question here from Mr. Ayman Al-Shahed. Yes, we will record the session. Yes. Welcome. Okay, Dr. Subki, I suggest that we start. Is that okay with you?
Okay, sure.
Yeah?
Sure.
All right.
I'll start now. Okay.
So,
good morning.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marian Kusman, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer of SIBA, that is the Confederation of Egyptian European Business Associations. SIBA is the Egyptian partner of the INVESTMED project, and we would like to welcome all of you to the second seminar in the first cycle of the Sustainable Business Management Course for Green Economy, which is organized in cooperation with BusinessMed, who is the lead partner of this project, the Dumsa University of Rome, the Institute of Entrepreneurship Development, the EU Med Association of Economists, and the European Institute of the Mediterranean. I'm really happy that we have today a joint session with participants from Egypt, Tunisia, and Lebanon. And I also love very much that the tutoring sessions of the course are now held jointly for the trainees of the three countries. I believe that's really an excellent opportunity for all of you to make contacts with potential partners in the projects or potential business partners, and also actually to make friends. I think that's a very important outcome of the projects, which will help the cross-border cooperation tremendously in the end. I have the great pleasure to introduce you today to the speaker, which is one of the most prominent figures for renewable energy in Egypt, if not the most prominent one, Professor Dr. Subki. And he will speak today on energy transition to sustainable energy as a driver to the green economy. And before I give him the floor to hold his presentation, I would like just to mention two of his very many important contributions to Egypt's renewable energy market. Dr. Subki is one of the founders of the Egyptian Electric Utility and Consumer Protection Regulatory Agency. The short name for this is EGYPTERA. EGYPTERA regulates, supervises, and controls the electricity generation, transmission, distribution, and consumption of electricity. And the agency focuses on ensuring the availability of electricity supply, taking into consideration environmental protection, the interest of the consumer, as well as the interest of the producers, transmitters, and distributors. And also, which is very important, he headed the New and Renewable Energy Agency between 2014 and 2016. And actually, he initiated large-scale development and deployment of renewable energies in Egypt through the introduction of processes like bidding, merchant-type schemes, and the introduction of the feed-in tariff. And I believe Dr. Subki will speak later on the feed-in tariff system. His main job actually is being a professor for energy planning at the Cairo University, and among a lot of other functions, which I don't want to mention all of them here right now. So thank you, everyone. And Dr. Subki, the floor is yours if you would like to start.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kusman, for this introduction. And I hope to meet the expectations of yourself, the colleagues, and the participants. Today, we will be speaking on, I have to reshare my screen. Oops, no. As mentioned, I'll be addressing energy transition to sustainable energy as a driver to green economy. The material was collected, arranged, and prepared by my colleague, Dr. Ghada Rafat, and myself. And I will start saying the main concepts. The presentation today will focus on energy transition as one of the ways to green economy leading to sustainable business arrangement. And basically, there is a lot of, I would say, job opportunities during when addressing the different aspects, the technical, the financial, the legislative aspects of the energy transition, green economy it makes it very wide and potentially very attractive for developing businesses and activities in these three major sectors, technically and financially, as well as legislative. I'll be addressing in the beginning some of the well-known green economy definitions and what it is meant by a green economy. And then I will be addressing sustainable energies and related financial and economical feasibilities, and we'll try to differentiate between financial analysis and economical analysis. And then I will focus a little bit on the information communication awareness and its importance in promoting and helping in the energy transition, and it's really a critical aspect of the whole chain. Then I'll speak about legislation, and I'll mention a few legislation well known around the world and how these legislations fit different countries for their different needs. I'll also speak about how can we judge the activities through a set of key performance indicators, which the different pioneers can select from. And then I'll speak in a positive way about the impact of COVID-19, how that affected the energy transition activities. As a matter of fact, we say energy transition to sustainable energy and as a driver to green economy involve a relatively large number of stakeholders, among which are the energy planners, the technology providers, the project developers, as well as the financiers. It also includes members of the parliament, academia, legislator entities, media, and NGOs, and where the media and NGOs have a real crucial responsibility there. Of course, we cannot forget the other side of the coin, the off-takers, the end users of energy, and the recipient of clean energy, and so on. So these different relevant stakeholders do have different level of relations, exchange of information, different level of transparencies for the information, and so they transfer information between them in a qualitative as well as quantitative terms. Speaking about green economy, the green economy was first coined when the government of the United Kingdom in 1989 did ask a group of economists, environmental economists, to have a blueprint for a green economy in order to establish a stronger economy, to help in building a stronger economy. And that was, it was under the umbrella of sustainable development, and based on which the UK has introduced a number of policies as well as public projects for improving the economy under the umbrella of sustainable development. In 2008, the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, championed a group of green stimulus packages, and also to enhance the economy with the target of pollutant reduction. So introducing economical activities in the different countries under different policies, frameworks, and to help in reducing the pollution. And it was encouraging different governments to implement these green stimulus packages to help their economy, of course. I just try to reduce. In October 2008, the UNEP has commissioned that study for having a new umbrella, which was called Global Green New Deal. That global Global Green New Deal was supported by the UNEP, and it proposed a number of policy actions to stimulate economic recovery and improvement and sustainability of the world economy, and it encouraged governments to allocate stimulus funds to green sectors to set out 3 objectives. One of them is primarily the economic recovery. The second one, to reduce poverty or eliminate poverty. And the third one was to reduce carbon emissions and ecosystem degradation. So these are the 3 targets where the global the UNEP was targeting. The basic concept here in green economy is to have an activity which is low carbon, resource efficient, maximizing the efficiency of the available resources, as well as socially inclusive. It should include all community types or community groups. In a green economy, we look at the gross employment and income are driven by public and private investments in such new economic activities, as well developing infrastructure assets that reduce carbon emissions and pollution, as well as replacing some of the existing infrastructure to make a room for more efficient infrastructure, which has less carbon emissions and enhanced energy and resource efficiency, depending on the time and the availability of these resources, and the prevention of the loss of any biodiversity and ecosystem services. The UNEP indicated that the green investments need to be supported through targeted public expenditure, policy reforms, and that's quite important to have an encouraging policies and with incentives, and changing in taxation and regulation toward reducing the pollution, as well as promote natural capital as critical economic asset and a source of public benefits, especially for the poor people. So we need to make sure the welfare of all the community members. That's quite important to get them all engaged in these different economic activities toward green economy. the notion of green economy does not replace sustainable development. I mean, they are complementing, they are leading to one another. It creates a new focus on economy, investment, capital and infrastructure, employment and skills, and positive social and environmental outcomes. So it's really heaven for everyone, supposedly. There is no internationally agreed upon a definition for green economy, but there is a number of definitions. They all fall in the same targets. For example, one says it results in improved human well-being and social equity while significantly reducing environmental risk and ecological scarcities. It's an economy that is low in carbon and pollution, resource efficient and socially inclusive. Maybe we can hear it should help public and private investments in resulting in reducing the emissions while preventing the losses of biological and ecological diversity. These investments need to be stimulated through direct public spending and policy reforms. The development path should reserve natural capital and even improve on rebuild as it is considered a source for public benefit, and many community sectors, especially the poor ones, might depend on it in their living. And another possible definition, it's low carbon, resource efficient, and socially inclusive, that was announced by the UNEP in 2011. And this wide definition has been used recently since then widely. Another definition, it's for a green economy offered by the Green Economics Conditions. It is defined as it's a resilient economy that provides a better quality of life for all within the ecological limits of the planet. So you can see that all of these definitions fall into the well-being of the human as well as all living species on Earth. Another terminology aside the green economy or complementing a green economy is the blue economy. The blue economy from its title, it's really, it has to do with the water cycle. You have oceans and then evaporation and then clouds and the wind moving these clouds, and then you have rainfall, snowfall, and then back to rivers and oceans and so on. A blue economy is it does renew the standards of fishing, ship recycling, decommissioning of offshore platforms, and so on. Blue economy encourage better stewardship of ocean and blue resources. It aims for the improvement of human well-being and social equity while significantly reducing environmental risk. Again, we are really, based on all of these definitions, we're looking for a perfect world within our current resources. Oceans regulate of the climate conditions, offer clean energy, sustain us with oxygen, food, and other resources. And of course, if these ocean levels change, we might be flooded. And so we have to keep on another hand, also the Earth's temperature to a lower value, to a standard which every one of us is trying to limit the temperature increase around the Earth in order for these oceans to stay at the same level they are in now, or even lower. The blue and green economy is developing developing green infrastructures in coastal areas while help preserve biodiversity, landscapes, and benefiting tourism and coastal economy. Blue economy underlines the need for investment in research, skills, while benefiting tourism and coastal economy. And we mitigate climate change by developing offshore renewable energy. And that's where the energy transition concept surface up within the blue economy, decarbonization, maritime transport, and greening ports. Having said that, I just will look if there is okay. I saw there is some questions. Now we'll move to sustainable energies. Sustainable energies is a okay. Apparently. There is okay, sustainable energies. In sustainable energies, we are the main relevant stakeholders are the energy planners who look at energy, different possible energy resources, and as well as the different technology providers where through these technologies, they can harness the resources, the energy resources in an efficient way, and then for the developers to utilize these technologies and implement projects. And of course, the financiers needs to be motivated to finance these project. I'll pose a question here. I don't expect an immediate feedback, but let us say, while over the last 7,000 years, we did not use only clean energy, sun, wind, and so on, and we resorted to fossil fuels, especially in the last few hundred years, 500 years or so. Keep that in mind, and I'd like your feedback on that later on during our discussion today. Sustainable energies are referred to as clean energy. It comes from natural resources or processes that are continuously replenished. For example, sunlight, wind keep shining, even though they are not shining everywhere all the time, but globally they are available all over the day, but in different parts of the world. They have been used for a long time, as I said, around 7,000 years ago, or even more, if we can go deeper in history. Sun was used for heating purposes, and wind is coming actually from the sun. The movement of wind is due to the heating of the different air layers, and that provides us with wind. So sun, in a way, is the source of our energy. It gives us heat, and moves the wind, and evaporate water. And this is the question which I posed. if someone would like to give me a feedback now, that would be nice. Well, I'm not getting an answer, but yeah.
Yeah, well, you can give your feedback in the Q&A session section of which you see down in the Zoom window. So okay. Yeah, please don't be shy to quote, also raise your questions here in these sections, please.
Thank you. I have a question in the Q&A saying how is developing offshore renewable energy related to blue economy? It's basically utilizing the offshore platform. So because it's built within the offshore areas, then it is related to what we refer to as a blue economy, because the development, especially of wind farms on land, are growing in capacity, but they are faced by natural geographical obstacles where they reduce the possibility of generation of electricity, for example, from onshore. While in the offshore, we can go. The obstacles are not there, and we can even, technology have helped us to reach higher capacities and so on. So this is, in a way, how it is related. Maybe I will try to answer this, why we resort to fossil fuels rather than renewables over the last 500 years, because the technology was cheaper, far much cheaper to utilize these fossil fuel bases from coal, oil, and natural gas. So the technologies to utilize them were cheaper on both on financial and economical levels. But the story has changed recently. Okay, again, whenever I stop moving, oops. The expensive well, it was considered for a number of years that using clean energy, renewable energies are expensive in technology, but that has changed. And over the last 10, 20 years, we had a rapid change in the level of investment, as well as also in accessing renewables, even though if we don't have the renewables available on site near us, so we can through integration of grids and so on, we can access renewables even if they are far away from our locations. Whenever we say sustainable energies, the one which comes on the top is the hydro, wind, solar, and other like wave, tidal, and so on. Hydro and wind and solar are relatively, from a technology point of view, are well developed. Wave, tidal, and so on are on the verge of being economically or commercially available, but still there is room for improvement. There is room for research and development in these technologies. In addition, of course, wave, tidal, and waste to energy, and so on. Here, these are some statistics which were reported in British Petroleum. These statistics shows in the figure in the chart to the right of the screen, it shows that renewables are growing faster than other sources, as well as in some cases there is renewables as well as and hydro, while other resources, the oil and coal, are not that much growing at the same time. It shows here in the middle graph the share of Africa in primary energy demand. So Africa and parts of Asia, especially Western Asia, are, even though they are a resource of energy, while the demand is not that high. This graph is also showing the share of primary energy, and it shows here that the share of primary energy coming from oil is declining, while on the other hand, gas is increasing. With the one which is increasing at a high rate is renewables, energies, and so on. This is just a table showing in numbers, some of the numbers which were reported in the recent report by Irina. 2021, and it shows the share of renewable between the different technologies: the hydropower, the pump storage, the wind, the upwind, the onshore, the offshore wind, the solar photovoltaic, the concentrated solar power, and biogas, and so on. So it's an informative table. Maybe you will not be able to follow the numbers now during the presentation, but the reference to it is clearly shown on the slide. This graph is just again emphasizing how much is the renewable energy capacities in megawatt is increasing. Onshore and offshore of wind is gaining a lot, and it's present a large portion. Solar is picking up, and biogas and biofuels are also growing. Again, that's a chart saying the same thing, but not in capacity. This was in capacity, where the capacity reached 3,000 gigawatts, which is a high percentage of the available capacities in the world, as well as the energy, the contribution of renewable energy, as shown in the initial the figure from 2 slides or 3 slides before, showing the share of renewable in the energy mix around the world. Now, if we come, I'll just check
okay.
also. Yes.
May I suggest, because I've seen on the chat a comment from Mrs. Rania Mohammed, which might be relevant to the sustainable energies. Mrs. Rania Mohammed, she is commenting that unlike natural gas and coal, we can't store up wind and sunshine to use when we need more to make more electricity. If the wind doesn't blow or the sun hides behind the clouds, there is no electricity. Okay, so maybe you would like to comment on this.
Okay, yeah, thank you very, very much, Ms. Rania, for this. Actually, your comment is quite relevant and quite critical. You are right, exactly, that sun and wind is not available all the time. They are intermittent to a certain extent. We can have forecasts for them, but on a limited time frame. So to overcome that is the idea of global networks, interconnecting networks all over the world. And there is an initiative which was initiated by China a couple of years ago, actually more than maybe 3 or 4 years ago, to have an infrastructure which connects the networks, the electric networks all over the earth through the North Pole and so on, to eventually come to accessibility for renewables from different parts of the world. So you're right. In the beginning, there is, and that challenge still exists, and that makes it also at the moment a bit challenging, or challenging as a matter of fact, to just rely 100% on renewables. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because yes, we have to keep in mind that for some time we'll have to still to rely on fossil fuels as well as renewables in a complementary fashion, but in a gradual way. This fossil fuel, the dependence on fossil fuel will die whenever we have either excellent interconnections of networks, at least on regional levels, and then moving from regional levels to a more global level, as well as developing technologies for storage. Well, now there exists some technologies for storage through batteries, but it's expensive. But technology now also, I might elaborate here on a case, for example, when on the interconnection, or in the intended interconnection of 3,000 megawatts between Egypt and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In that design, in that interconnection for exchange of electric energy, Egypt will be providing the kingdom with renewable energies during the day, where the peak of the load is in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is during the day. So we are providing them with renewables during the day, and then we are getting energy back in the evening while they are off their peak. So as a matter of fact, we look at it as if we are storing renewables during the day in another network, and then getting this energy back during the evening. Of course, that has to be accompanied, even though it's technically feasible, but that has to be accompanied by a lot of commercial agreements, which reflects what I'm saying, and that's referred to as what we call energy banking. In addition to that, energy storage through batteries exists, but to limited scale, where solar energy is stored in batteries through photovoltaic system, but it is not that cost competitive so far. Another way of storage is what we refer to as the pump storage. While during the day, we can pump some water into a lake or a reservoir, and that water which is pumped to this reservoir utilizes renewable energies, while renewable energies are available, and if they are not needed during the day, I'm speaking about solar or even as well as wind. So we pump water into that pump storage reservoirs, and then we get electricity back through downfall, dropping this water. So again, it's a virtual way of saying that we are storing energy from renewables. I'd like to thank you very much for raising this question. It was right on. You're hitting the nail exactly, and that's something which we are all working on.
There is another question, Dr. Subki, because it's also for sustainable energy a relevant question from Mrs. Minna Salama. And she's asking, what are your thoughts about the use of nuclear energy to generate electricity?
Well, let me say it's a source of energy, but again, the reliance on it will sustain for some time, given that energy transition to renewable will overtake that or not. So it's a matter of economical decisions, development decisions. Yani moving to nuclear is challenged by being able to move to more sustainable energies, renewable energies, and then eventually not relying on nuclear energy. But again, similar to the fossil fuel, we'll need to keep on relying on them for some time, maybe beyond our lifetime, my lifetime at least, but you're all young generation. So yes, likely the reliance on nuclear energy will fade away gradually. On the other hand, of course, the technology developers for renewable energy, for nuclear energy are trying to overcome any risks related to it. But we cannot forget what happened in Fukushima a few years ago. So you cannot design your plans to zero risk. So again, just because of that, I think we need to work harder and harder on sustainable energies, renewable energies, in order to overcome the need for fossil fuels as well as nuclear energy. Nuclear energy has to produce electricity, but nuclear energy has a lot of positive applications, especially in the medical sector, in the food sector, and so on. So we should not disregard nuclear activities as something which is bad. There is some positive aspects, and it's really up to the researcher, developers, the human being in utilizing this resource in an efficient and safe way. I hope that I have answered your question or commented on your clarification gradually. I'll also comment here on something else regarding nuclear. We hear that some countries are dismissing or decommissioning their nuclear power plants. This is true in a way, but on the other hand, these countries who are dismissing or decommissioning some of the nuclear plants are still connected to other countries, which are primarily depending on nuclear energy. So again, will still rely on fossil fuel and nuclear for some time, but hopefully that sometime will maybe, in my opinion, maybe in about 30 years, will totally diminish, and will be able to utilize renewable energies in a very high percentage that include developing storage and developing efficient interconnections.
There is one more question or comment in the chat, which I think will lead to your next point, Dr. Sobri, the financial and economical feasibilities. It's by Mr. Salim Nissaf Salimi. Okay, he mentions that the short lifespan of renewable energy sources, lifespan of a wind turbine is about 25 years. If you compare this lifespan with other power plants, which is, just a second, I have to read it.
Yeah, they go up to 40 years.
He says 100 years, okay, hydro plants, okay.
Oh yeah, hydro plants, yeah.
So they wind lifespan of about 100 years. For this reason, wind and solar power plants are not economically profitable and sustainable, as well as storage capacity is very limited also. I think this will lead you to the next point, actually, that you are going to present.
Yes. But I'll give a quick feedback here. The technology development, for these different technologies, for the fossil fuel plants and so on, as well as the hydro plant. The hydro plants are renewable, so this is good. But for the fossil fuel plants, where the lifetime now reach 40 or 50 years, as compared to wind plants and solar plants, which do not exceed the 25 years, is a question or a challenge to the technology developers. I'll just give you an example. Some of the research work which is going on for a number of years now in the photovoltaic, and in the photovoltaic, there is research on using, instead of the material used these days, that some organic material can be used. But so far, the research did not have a long life for these photovoltaics. Its lifetime is for a few hours, maximum 1 day. So again, the research and development is something which is strongly needed, and I'm glad you say that we really need to put a lot of investments in a lot of investment in that direction, especially in areas where we are considered developing areas around the world. So research and development, education in that is an important matter. What you're saying is highly acknowledged, but we have to work on improving the lifetime of these technologies, and maybe also developing more advanced technology to harness the available resources in a more efficient way. I'll just give you an example. When we're speaking about concentrated solar power, the parabolic trough is a design, while the flat funnel is another design to reach the same thing, to heat water in tubes or heat oil in tubes. These technologies differ in cost and manufacturing complexity, and it's because of the research and development things are improving in that direction. And thank you for raising this point. Now, when it comes to financial and economical feasibilities, okay, again, here, in addition to the energy planners, the technology developers, and the financiers, the off-takers are part of this financial and economical analysis or feasibilities, because the off-takers are the ones who are representing the market for these technologies. If we have the technology and we don't have off-takers, so energy transition will not take place, or green economy will not take place. And I'd like also to remind you, when we are saying energy planner, technology developers, and financiers, we're speaking about, as well as engineers, we're speaking about different professionalities, different professions. So it's not only financing, it's not only engineering, it has to do a lot of aspects, materials, construction, and so on, as well as financing mechanism and contracting, financial contracting mechanisms. And I'll bring at the end of our interaction today some of what we call the concept of virtual trading of clean energy and renewable energy. So if we tackle financial feasibility, we are speaking on the aspect of individual projects. So we are looking at payback period, return on investment for a single project, for an individual project. And that these two items of the payback period and the return on investment rely very much on the prevailing renewable energy implementation schemes. Are we speaking about are we speaking about a net metering scheme? Are we speaking about a feed-in tariff? So what are, like, a feed-in tariff scheme in many countries, which means that end user can generate electricity from a renewable energy source, mainly in many cases was either wind and micro turbines as well, that the investor or the off-taker, the end user, can guarantee his return for a long time, which means he can facilitate financing his project, and that's quite important. So the condition of finance coming from the prevailing schemes to implement renewable energies and the anticipated financial revenues. Here, this chart is again from IRENA 2021, the International Renewable Energy Agency, which is in Dubai, and it has a branch in Germany. It shows here that the cost of renewable investment related to different renewable energy technology has fallen sharply over the last 10 years for solar photovoltaics, for concentrated solar power. You can see the drop is sometimes almost 10 times, by 90%. Offshore wind and onshore wind, the fossil fuel technologies is more or less steady. The geothermal, because it's a technology which is still under development, there's room for development, they're still increasing. And for hydro, because hydro now, some of the turbines designed are the research and development, and there is a slight increase because there is a lot of research and development on harnessing more energy from the waterfalls or micro turbines and so on. So there is a slight increase in that. So it's a well-developed technology, yet there is some room for improvement, and that room of improvement reflects on the investment level. This is another chart, but just to show you that over the last 40 years or so, the PV investment costs have went down from $100 per watt to less than $1 per watt. So it shows you how research and development is very much effective, and how the market demand pushes research and development. Research and development will only work when there is a market, there is a need for something like that. So this is just an example. Over 40 years, over like between the early 80s and the early 90s, the fall was almost 90%. And then between the 90s and the 2020, and the fall is less than that, but yet it's falling down because of the development of the technology. The economical feasibility is another side of our coin when dealing with financing and financial issues. When we are speaking about economical feasibility, we are speaking on the level of a country, and it's not an individual project, but what can the country gain from energy transition, moving to renewables, moving to green economy. It's basically the impact on the country level, the nation level. So, for example, the amount of avoided fuel use to generate electricity is something which is on a nation level. Either this fuel is obtained from national resources available within a country or coming from import. So moving to energy transition, moving to renewables will have some avoided expenditure, a large amount of avoided expenditures in using fossil fuel. Also, the amount of avoided pollutants, and that to a country is quite important. It's not only the reduction of pollutant CO2 of the NOx, and it's the negative impact on the temperature rise of the universe, but also it has a positive impact when reducing these pollutants on a different aspect like health issues and so on. And sometimes it's even hard to evaluate the economical or the saving on a national level on the health improvements when reducing the CO2 of the NOx. Of course, for a number of countries, what's referred to as the Annex 1 countries and non-Annex 1 countries, where countries are obliged to reduce their carbon level, their carbon emission levels due to different economic activities, especially the industrial activities. So it reduces reducing the environmental obligation on countries, which has these obligations, has to do a lot with the economical feasibility of moving to renewable energy. Coming now to our fourth issue here, or related issues of the energy transition, is the information and communication and awareness. It's quite important. Again, this group of stakeholders or relevant stakeholders include, among others as well, parliament members, academia, legislators, media, and non-government organizations. It's quite important that information exchange between these stakeholders and other stakeholders address the energy transition to sustainable energy and to moving eventually to green economy. And the interest is quite different. And I'll pose here a question. What would be the interest of a parliament member in energy transition? Different parliament members have different roles. Some of them have to do with energy. Some of them have to do with economical effects. Some of them have to do with health conditions, and some of them have interest in employment. So energy transition the information exchange with parliament members has to do with their role in the parliament. But a common role in the parliament is members of the parliament are very much interested in job creation. I mean, that's sometimes one of their main campaign slogans, that they will be able to have more jobs for their for the area they are representing. So whenever we're speaking about energy transition with member of the parliament, and the exchange of information has to do not with the efficiency or the technology details, but the number of jobs, such energy transition to sustainable energy, the number of jobs that will be created. And that's also one high interest of the media. So we need to package the energy transition concepts in the way is of interest to other to this group of media, NGOs, parliament as well. Academia are very much related to R&D. So again, they might be more related to the technology developers and the energy planners. When it comes to the legislators, from my own personal point of view, they are the key stakeholder in all of this network you are seeing. Nothing can happen unless there is the proper legislation to implement it. And maybe I'll comment on that later on when we come to the legislation section. Information, communication, and awareness has to do with the public opinion and planning for energy of energy portfolios. It's critical. It helps in decision makers to properly plan for the energy market. It's quite important that the proper message is transferred through the communication and awareness channels, and it would be rely on market research, which is quite important, and it should be reflecting the planner and the decision maker ideas, as well as how the off-takers perceive this plans and so on regarding any future plans for moving to renewable energies. Studies such as these involving public opinion on renewable energy are actually lacking in developing countries. Sometimes the state is look at itself as in a motherlyhood fashion, that I'm the mother and I know the best for everyone. So, but feedback from the recipient of renewable energies and energy transition activities is quite important. Again, what I'm saying here, we need to take into consideration the media, the communication, and exchange of information between the different stakeholders should be transparent as much as possible and based on facts from all relevant stakeholders, and not only on information from the service or the policy making. These information can be transferred through education campaigns, promotion campaigns, technical promotion campaigns, financial promotion campaigns, or media, and they all should be properly referenced whenever we're speaking about the source of information. In doing this, we need to have clear awareness, clear information, that we portray the activities that reflect a justice and fairness between the different stakeholders over the value chain of providing renewable energy, as well as receiving renewable energies. And I'll speak on a case study in a few minutes from Netherlands, where somehow fairness was not taken into consideration. Of course, the cost and risk and benefits of the different technologies have to be there. I mean, no one thought about in the beginning of the nuclear power plants, what is the cost of decommissioning? But the cost of decommissioning in nuclear plants now is an issue. So, and it might, decommissioning costs might be in some cases a stopper for implementing some of the technologies. And the benefit of the different communities, all communities, addressing the local needs, the local context, the local benefits for when having energy transition and moving to renewable energies have to be addressed and have to be clear. Also, we have to have, as relevant stakeholders, especially the off-takers, they have to need to know, to have a high level of confidence and trust in the decision-maker process. I know that I am running out of time, but I'll only go through the remaining 1,000 slides quickly.
Dr. Sufi, you have a bit of time, don't worry, because we have the questions in between. So
don't worry. Okay. All right. Okay, great. So I can go through the 1,000 slides then. For example, here is a case study from Kenya, where a survey was done showing how the end user receive renewables and so on, and that in a way resulted in that for example, access to electricity in Kenya has almost exceeded the 60%. I think now it's almost 70% in year 2020, exceeding the average of sub-Saharan Africa. This chart, this pie chart, shows how Kenya have moved from basically fossil fuel independency, how this fossil fuel was reduced from 33% in 2015, and only in 5 years they managed to reduce this by more than half, to 15%, and that was replaced by renewable energies, geothermal, wind, hydro. The percentage of hydro that reflects, even though as a percentage the hydro was reduced, but the absolute capacity number has grown. Some of the questions which the survey included was, what did you know? For that was for end users. It was not a big sample. It was a sample over, I think, 10,000, 1,000 something end users. And how do they receive the different terms? How do they know how are they aware of these terms or not. So between rural and urban end users, in most cases, urban users were more knowledgeable about the term. Another question in the survey was how did they learn about renewable energies? And again, from the different media, newspapers, TV, radio, internet, word of mouth. And as you can see here, in the rural areas, maybe the accessibility to internet is not that high. So the urban user get their information from internet much higher than the rural. While in the rural areas, the source was radio. Radio is a cheap instrument. It can operate on batteries and so on, and as well as a word of mouth. And a word of mouth is quite important in implementing some of the renewable energy projects, especially the small size projects. And that's quite interesting, and I think quite logic as well. When they were asked what they want first, and keeping electricity prices low. So the development in renewables leading to low electricity prices as well as accessibility came on top, and then electrification. And then after that, investing in renewable energy projects came at a lower priority, but the lowest was no additional taxes. So people do not want additional taxes related to the energy transition. In the article itself, it showed that people are accepting, if people do not move to energy transition, maybe additional taxes can be accepted for people who are, or end users who are using fossil fuel based. And some of the analysis showed that people who are negative toward energy transition or the different energy sources came more in the, whenever they're negative, it came in the rural areas, which also reflecting lack of exposure to knowledge. While on the contrary, on the other hand, when people were positive on the renewable energies, then the urban participant had a bigger share. If we move to another case, in Malaysia, here it shows the plan in Malaysia based on combining a net metering scheme for large projects as well as a quota scheme. And I think I'll explain that whenever we come to the legislation part, but they combine two schemes for promoting, for encouraging investment in renewable energies. They promoted a net metering scheme where end user can have financial benefits, as well as a quota scheme where a certain obligation on either service provider and end user are obliged to resort to renewable energies. This is just to show the net metering, the net energy metering scheme, and the quota did help in 1 year having almost a 900% increase in the capacities which had renewable energies. Another case study is the case study of in Netherlands. In Netherlands, they had an aggressive program to reach 6,000 megawatts of onshore wind power by the year 2020. And one of the areas had a plan of 700 megawatts planned in that area. And the land was bought. The landowners did accept having these wind farms in their areas. But on the other hand, the local populations in these areas were, even though they were aware of the advantage of renewable energies and so on, but they did not see any benefit, immediate benefit for their localities. They did not see their participation in construction jobs, or they did not see any mitigation effects for sound pollution or shades and so on. So they were quite reluctant, not the landowners, but the localities who are, I mean, the population in the locality. So in that way, they resisted the project because their immediate needs were not addressed properly. So even though they had a high level of awareness, but they felt why should they have the 700 megawatts in their area? Why not other areas? So the distribution of renewable energy were not explained to them very carefully, very transparently. They did not see any economical, any financial benefits for their own, having, for example, accounting which allowed them to access this renewable energies, reflecting, for example, in the costs of commodities they are producing. They are, maybe this would reduce or help them in marketing their products which are produced in their localities better. As well, they were not, they did not find any obligation from the state to allow or to rely on specialists from the inhabitants of these localities and so on. So there was a bit of a mistrust or a low trust in the decision maker process. There is a number of mitigation barriers, not only in the case of Netherlands, but again, I think awareness and raising awareness and availability to access information to answer all questions would be quite important. These, of course, usually are done through also public hearings related to each project at an early stage. Mitigating some of these barriers would be in developing curriculum on renewable energies and at the different education levels with different complexity. Removing any policy or regulatory conflicts is quite important as well. And it's not only regulatory conflicts, but some of the regulatory activities might be not strong enough or cause confusion. So that needs to be cleaned up. To have a legislation at a high level where that high level is quite important to make things in place, right in place. Making sure that the grids are interconnected to have accessibility to renewables in different parts, even if they are far away. the development of renewable energy industry, the development of industries which are manufacturing the different components of the renewable energy technology need to be addressed, especially in local communities whenever needed. Aspects of energy security and energy diversity, and actually also tying energy security to the water security as well as the food security. It's so it is the water, food, energy nexus. That's quite important. Having clear standards and codes which allow the presence of reliable and quality equipment in the process. Having a clear resource assessment and a clear also technologies which can access this resource. Just to give an example here, wind turbines. Most wind turbines, when developed, were they could access winds in the neighborhood of 8 meters per second to 12 meters per second. Now technologies have improved, and you can have turbines which can access wind energy at lower speeds, maybe 5 meters per second, and 6 and 7 meters per second. It's quite important to have a clear idea on how the interconnection of grids will connect these different resources. So accessibility to renewables through development of grids and the time horizon for developing these grids is quite important. And that's something which happened in Europe over the last close to 30 years, where a lot of a high level of interconnection exists so far now there. That's allowing to the exchange of energy in a way, and these grids are always being strengthened and their capacities are increased for the welfare of reducing investments in one country and having accessibility to investments in other countries, investments related to energy and electricity through the interconnection grids, which are higher in investment costs. This is just I should put an example of the renewable energies in Egypt. This is a project which is funded by the EU. It's 100 watt peak project, a PV project, which supplies that market, food market, vegetable markets, fruit markets by electricity through a net metering scheme. And that is in the early stages of its implementation now. Another project is in planning. Is another project that's called the SOLT project. It is with the University of Alexandria, where one of the buildings will be equipped with 150 kilowatts peak to supply the building during the day hours, the classes, the laboratories with electricity.
Dr. Subki, there is one question on by Nauraz Abbas, which I think is relevant to this part on information and awareness building. It's in the Q&A box. It's as change in mentalities and attitudes starts at school and at an early age. Are there any global decisions or goals similar to the UN Progress Goals concerning education and media in disseminating the importance of the use of renewable energy and of creating blue and green economies that are set so far? This question was raised by Nauraz Abbas.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Actually, you are truly right on that. Education plays a crucial role here. a crucial role in knowing, being exposed to the concept of energies, renewable energies and energy transition, as well as an important role on how to do that from a technology point of view. So the schools, the universities would gradually move from basic information to a more elaborate, detailed information that would address the different components, the resource assessment, the different components of the technology and the operation, and then eventually research and development post the university level, where it's quite important. And we see that in a number of the countries in the region, where especially on the after the high school level, where there is some departments were established to address renewable energies, as well as related aspects to renewable energies, and either the manufacturing part of the equipment or moving or using these energies. There is no clear goals, as far as I know, within the region here, that, for example, number of target students and so on. But I'd like to refer here to a very, very I would say interesting program. I would say also a successful one. It's called the REMINA program, Renewable Energy for the Middle East and North Africa, and it's addressing renewable energies and energy efficiency, and it's a collaboration between 3 universities to provide master's degrees in renewable energy and energy efficiency. These universities are Kassel University in Germany, as well as a university in Tunisia and a university in Egypt, Cairo University in Egypt, Kassel University, and forgive me, I slipped my mind the name of the university in Tunisia. But these 3 universities provide graduate work, graduate research related to implementation in the area of renewable energies and energy efficiency. It's on now for about 11 years, this program, and more than 100 graduates graduated from that, from both Germany, Tunisia, and Egypt, as well as now it's open even for participants from other countries. So it just shows you that it's helping to develop activities based on either engineering aspects or legal aspects, or as well as legislative aspects from participants from Germany, Tunisia, and Egypt. And just a call, 1 week ago, one of the graduates, I think name was Ms. Galila, she's from Morocco. She did win the INI award on energy issues and so on. So, and she was a graduate of that program. So again, such programs, such collaborative programs allow for knowledge building and cooperation and exchange of culture as well. And that's quite important. And I think Ms. Kuthman referred to in the building of knowing each other better, or having friendship between different participants. And that's something such a program in education help in doing that between participants where they can eventually have projects in their countries or other countries with people from different disciplines, either legislative or financial or engineering. And the program itself does not have a prerequisite of the undergraduate knowledge. So people can be of political background, political science. We had someone from pharmaceutical at one time, and so on. So there is again quite important what Mr. Abbas have mentioned here, that education is crucial. Education is crucial on two aspects: on the aspect of efficient use of resources, efficient use of energy, efficient use of anything, water, energy, and so on, as well as efficient, as well as moving toward energy transition and renewable energy. I hope I answered that.
Thank you, Dr. Subki. Yes, I think we can continue. Yeah.
Okay. Again, now here is a chart with these charts are referenced primarily from IRENA, and it shows the share of electricity production from solar in different countries in our neighborhood, like from Jordan, Morocco, Egypt, Tunisia, and Lebanon. It's not speaking about the absolute numbers. Maybe the absolute numbers are high in Morocco, in Egypt, but the percentage contribution is very clear, high in Jordan and still low in Lebanon. The share of electricity production from wind, again, Morocco, Jordan, Tunisia, Egypt is listed here, and again, Lebanon has room for improvement whenever they pull out from their current difficult situation. Here it's just from hydro, we have Egypt, Morocco, again, Lebanon and Jordan, and it just shows that these percentages are getting lower, just not because of because these countries have utilized most of the available capacity, and the additional capacities are coming from fossil fuel-based stations. Legislation.
Tasuki, there is one comment from Rania. She's saying that she thinks that Saudi Arabia is setting its sight on becoming world's largest supplier of hydrogen.
Yes. I mean, if you're all following what's happening over the last few months in Saudi Arabia and the movement toward production of green hydrogen, especially green hydrogen, which means from renewables, is moving, and the NEOM project in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is gaining a lot of ground now. And if you have followed the news over the last 2 days, there is an event in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia addressing green economy, green energy, and there is a lot of potential as well as aggressive programs under implementation for moving toward renewable energies, greening the economy. We're speaking about 10 million or growing 10 million of trees in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, for example. So that's moving toward green economy. If you can follow the news on TV especially, you will find a lot of projects and information that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is likely leading the way in this regard. And of course, hydrogen needs is there. It will offset gradually, don't know in how many years, but it will offset gradually the reliance on natural gas. And Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Egypt, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia are potential providers for green hydrogen from their own localities. Coming to legislation, legislation again is an important thing. We cannot do anything without a legislation, without a legislator who's working on legislation, without a parliament who's approving this legislation and issuing this legislation. So it's quite important. I always joke, officially, we are not born unless there is a birth certificate. So this birth certificate is a legislation. We are not a graduate of a school or a university unless we have our graduation certificate. So again, and this is another legislation. Even we are not dead unless we have a death certification. So legislation is quite important. It's quite important. This sketch here or map shows the different policies and legislation which help moving to sustainable energies, renewable energies, and the energy transition. We have main policies and we have supplementary policies. The main policies include pricing policies. The pricing policies are something like the feed-in tariff, added premium, or a net metering. Maybe the leading ones are the feed-in tariff and the net metering schemes, and that feed-in tariff is applied and implemented in more than 70 countries around the world, and it's helping the production of electricity from renewables, the production of renewable electricity from renewables. We have the quantitative policies like the quota, which the quota did not gain a lot of success in many countries, but again, it's now the need for it shows is growing once again. Competitive bid, green certificates, that goes into green certificates like virtual trading of renewables and so on. On supplementary policies, we're speaking about contractual policies, power purchase agreements, and third-party access and energy banking. These contractual agreements are long-term agreements, which guarantees the investments and the payback of the investments, especially that in renewables, you have a capital investment which is paid upfront, but the operation and maintenance cost is very low as compared to conventional power plants. Of course, taxes and custom incentives are helping, but many of the countries would not resort to that because you will be subjecting different economical activities to different taxes. So it's not favored in many countries. Financial, whenever a project is based on a feed-in tariff, for example, that allows active financing conditions, soft loans, or even governmental purchase of the renewable energies. course, all of these cannot be implemented at the same time, but again, a combination of them can be done. As a matter of fact, most of the existing legislation around the world are legislation which encourage the production of energy from renewables, either electricity or heat. But that needs to be accompanied by what we refer to a pulling scheme. So you need the pushing scheme and the pulling scheme. And the pushing scheme usually comes at the level of generation, while the pulling scheme comes in many cases on the end user level and maybe partly on the supply level. So a combination of these schemes could help us move again in a faster way. What I'm saying here is we need to work having all of these schemes collectively, if possible, not necessarily all of them. We have seen the case of Malaysia, where they combined the net metering scheme with a quota scheme, and that helped them to get 9 times what they were targeting regarding the contribution of renewables. In the legislation scheme, we will have definitely more jobs, all genders over acceptable lifespans, and that reminds me of a program. I think it was a World Bank program in Sub-Saharan Africa, where it was called the Grandmother Program. Well, grandmothers were they're relatively old, and they have already done their share of responsibilities during their lifetime toward their families and so on. And so this grandmother program was simply a simple assembly line to assemble lanterns for light through PV. So they were provided with the different components of lanterns, and they were just assembling it. And that helped a lot of people where they did not have access to electricity to have light during night, where the grandmother assembled units with batteries, PVs, small sizes of PVs and lights. So I'm saying again, a lot of the legislation can help in creating jobs. The financial activities and the economical activities are important regarding financing and so on. So whenever having a legislation, like for example, in the case of Egypt, where when the feed-in tariff was introduced in late 2014, we had a rush and managed to stimulate the market regarding PVs and so on, and investments were easily financed by different financial institutions, and the related legislation, the related power purchase agreements and land agreements were critically reviewed by different international financial institutions, leading to a stable market in that regard. That all, of course, will lead to a greener economy. Key performance indicators, I will be short in that, but we need to put some main indicators. I will list a list of indicators and what we are looking for in these indicators. We need to have a change in legislation facilitating energy transition. So the legislation leading to energy transition, allowing more contribution of renewables, less contribution of fossil fuel-based generating stations. Like, for example, the legislation which was issued in Germany to decommission all the coal plants by year 2038. Now, this went down to 2030. So that's done through a transition, helping energy, helping the renewable energies to step in and fill in the gap. Suppliers, one of the key performance indicators is the number of suppliers in the market, and that will lead also to competition leading to a better quality. Developers also the same way, higher number of developers, higher competition, higher quality. Off-takers, more off-takers, especially the off-takers involved in energy banking or net metering energy schemes, where they want to green their activities, especially industrial activities, where they need to have a greener impact on their industry. So to enable to have more competitive edge when they say that their products are supplied with green energy and so on. And that will give them a competitive edge in the market. Capacity and energy, higher capacity and higher energy of renewables is one of the key performance indicators which indicate, are we moving in the right direction in our programs or not? Of course, setting targets for that is quite important. The cost, lower cost, lower investment and operation and cost, as well as having local industries to manufacture. For example, now in Egypt, there is a lot of, not a lot, but there are a number of local manufacturers who are designing robots or mechanized cleaning equipment for PV panels. And that's an issue here in Egypt where we have a lot of dust and so on. So cleaning the panels is quite important. And that is helping in lowering the cost of investment as well as the operation and maintenance. Workforce and gender. The higher workforce, the higher number of genders, females and males in the industry is an indication, it's a performance indicator which we can look at. Education. Education, as mentioned by Mr. Abbas a few minutes ago, education is quite important, and education which reflects eventually behavior at the children at the school years and so on, and eventually coming to research and development. So more concrete courses, curriculum regarding the renewable energy are quite important in controls and so on. And that's quite important. Control of the equipment, the movement of the equipment of renewable energy technologies. This table, I did put the reference here for you, but it shows how large are the number of workforce in the different technologies around a number of countries, China, Brazil, United States, India, and European Union, 28 countries. It's just for you, for information to know the size of potential workers. As I mentioned already, energy transition involve potential jobs in engineering, in financial analysis, in legislative activities. Three of them are equally needed and quite important. Now that brings us to the last part of my presentation, which is the impact of COVID. The impact of COVID, in a way, as most of us seen, that had led to a reduction in the global gross domestic product by 3.5%. That is the largest since the high depression time. 100 million people were pushed in poverty. That's according to the IMF. So the economic loss from pandemic is high, and a lot of the losses were seen in countries, both developed countries and developing countries. The energy reduction reached minus 4.5% as compared to an expected 2.5%. Global carbon emissions from energy use were reduced by 6.2%. That reflects 2 gigaton of CO2 reduction. That brought us down to the level of emissions in 2011. The carbon intensity did fall by 1.8%. We'd like to sustain this level, this reduction, but not through a reduced economy emissions, reduced economy activities, but through improved economy through green energy and green economy. The energy demand has fallen, and these carbon emissions were the largest since World War II, which is 75 years ago. Oil has fallen by more use has fallen by 9.3%. The rate, if we can keep that rate of decline for the next 30 years, we'll reach the target of maintaining the temperature of Earth under controllable level and mitigating any climate risk and so on. This, of course, energy reduction, energy demand was extended due to the extended lockdowns, crushing the transport. The transport were quite reduced. Use of jet fuels were reduced by 40%. But actually, as I said earlier, the importance is because now we are going back to normal economical activities gradually. So we need to reduce the emissions, but keeping the economy. So it's a balance between resorting to efficiency as well as efficient use of resources and moving to more sustainable resources of energy. And this here shows that the electricity consumption went by 0.9%, and then the renewables, the contribution of renewables did increase by numbers shown here in wind as solar. They were the larger contributors. Here is again an analysis of the economic global energy demand falling due to the different financial situation the world has experienced, and we are experiencing a 6% reduction. That's higher than the impact of the 2008 financial crisis. The interesting thing about this chart when it was first published 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, it indicated an expected change in the primary energy use, and the only increase was in renewables. Others, nuclear, oil, gas, and coal did experience a reduction, and in the renewables is the only economic activity which did gain some percentage, positive percentage as compared to other resources. Last but not least, saying is in this progress of renewable energies toward moving toward energy transition to renewable energies, we need to work also on energy efficiency, better use of energy, the new growth of energy routes, such as hydrogen, so that will help us in decarbonization, as mentioned with Minna, I think she mentioned that a few minutes ago, and as well as to build up some activities regarding carbon capture, usage, and storage. The carbon capture and storage activities were studied for the last 30 years, and somehow it was not proven financially attractive, but now it's becoming more financially attractive, and storage areas can be used in depleting gas wells and so on, but analysis and research has to be done in if this carbon seeps into cracks of the earth. It has to be looked at very carefully. I'd like to thank you all for your participation and your very stimulating clarification and questions. Thank you very much for that. And I hope my colleagues, I did not exceed. I think I still have 1 minute to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Sobki, for this, as usual, I have to say, very in-depth and very informative presentation, and especially for explaining the interdependency between the energy transition and the green economy. And also for explaining the nexus between the technology, the finance, awareness, information, legislation, all the components which are relevant for the energy transition. Thank you very much. Thank you also a lot for the participants, for all the questions raised, and it was a pleasure to have you all on board. I should mention to Dr. Reda Ahmed Kamen for the presentation because she's the co-author of the presentation of Dr. Sobki. Sorry, I forgot that. Yeah. So I think the recording will be put online, and the organizers will keep you posted on this. Right? Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.